Welcome to Stormwoods, the only woods I know of where you need an invitation to visit. The only woods I know of where somewhere there is always a storm raging. The only woods I know of where the deeper into the forest you go, the larger and stranger the trees and plants, the larger and stranger the animals, the smaller and smaller the path becomes. The only woods I know of where you need to follow these specific rules. No chainsaws or axes of any kind. Don't visit unless invited by a resident or by Hecate herself. Leave out offerings for the denizens of the woods. If you hear dogs barking, expect a visit from Hecate. Don't stray from the path unless you are a torchbearer or a keeper of the woods, just to name a few. And if Stormwoods ends up liking you, it will often ask you for a favor. Those favors are how I ended up spending time in Carpe Noctem, a town with rules of its own. Hello, my friend. Not much has really happened on the Carpe Noctem front since last we spoke. Eli. He has to plan and plan and plan. It is a trip there, and he is planning like we're going to Mars, I swear to God. And I could just go without him, but I think that might be deeply stupid to do. And the fight that would ensue would be epic. He's pretty much a chill dude unless I do something that he considers dangerous. And luckily, he doesn't consider most things dangerous. He's not like the weird controlling, oh my God, you went outside? That's dangerous. He's not that guy. You know that. But he's pretty convinced at this point that Carpe Noctem is full of actual vampires, although he feels crazy thinking that, so we're still living in the Schrodinger's box of, are they alive LARPers or are they dead vampires? We don't know. So, we're existing with one foot in each reality. But either way, he considers them to be dangerous because he does consider the food that we had to have been drugged. His operating theory is that more than likely we weren't going to be kidnapped or disappeared, but you can drug a couple, they can have a weird night, and, if you are a really dedicated LARPer who wants to drink blood, you can drink a little bit of blood and then send them on their way. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I don't disagree exactly. I don't know what game they're playing over there in Carpe Noctem. I really don't. But I can tell you, I heard from Addison. And Addison, they have gone there twice for girls' night. And seen no one. Nothing weird has happened. All systems normal. And I said, hey, did you invite Augustina on these trips? Yes, I did. Okay. And I said to her, I know that you have known Augustina for a very long time, and I am not going to tell you how to live your life or how to deal with your business. But as long as she knows about those trips, I think those trips will be uneventful. There was a reason why Stormwoods did not allow her at our meeting. And there's a reason why she never made it to my front door. I am, again, saying this very gently with knowledge that she is your friend, and I am not trying to drive a wedge there in any way, shape, or form. It could be something as simple as her phone is bugged and she doesn't know it. This doesn't have to be an Augustina is evil kind of situation. Now, between you and me and the lamppost here, I think Augustina is absolutely shady as all get out. I think that she is very much sharing information with bad people, but they have known her for years and years and years. They trust her. So I threw out the possibility that maybe her phone is bugged. Maybe there's some electronic surveillance going on. That way, Addison can experiment how she likes. We're sharing information-ish. I'm not sharing when I'm going. I'm not sharing what our plan is. I'm not sharing any of that stuff. That is per my judgment as well as Eli's, because Eli's basically like, no, 2 people or 3 people can keep a secret if 2 are dead. So, we're not going to widen our circle with strangers right now. Yes, they made it to the house, which means that you can pool information after the fact, but we will curate that information very specifically because, we don't want to draw attention to our plans or plots or whatever we want to call them. Now, all of that said, I feel like he's taking too long. At this point, days and days and days have gone by. It's been weeks since we saw Maddie, who I am pretty convinced we saw her. And it's been, the longer you wait with things like this, the worse your chances of finding any information are. If you believe all of the TV shows that say, oh, the first 24 hours are the most critical. Like at this point, we're already in cold case territory if you've watched a lot of crime shows. Now, I know that you're more of a crime podcast listener, but I could never do true crime. One of the things I can tell myself with watching fiction is none of this actually happened. None of this is real. I can't do that with true crime. With true crime, this stuff actually happened. The horror is real. So, I don't need certain images in my head, which is why it might be deeply stupid that we're going to go into Carpe Noctem and search for a missing girl. And one of the things that Eli and I are talking about is, we may need to make ourselves regular. Make it just, we happen to go there quite frequently. And the thing is, I don't know how we're going to do that while not eating or drinking anything. And it may be one of those where one of us eats or drinks and the other one doesn't. Like there are a lot of times where Eli and I go out and we'll order a couple of drinks and I'll just give him mine, um, just because I don't want it. And so, like, he and I are very good at, like, he'll eat food and then he'll give me his empty plate and take my leftover plate. So maybe we can do something along those lines where one of us eats and the other one doesn't. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how we're going to be able to play that off as, normal. Because I feel like if we're going to places and not eating or drinking, then it's going to be really obvious that we're casing the joint, for lack of a better way of phrasing that. But Eli's thought is most bars don't care as long as you are spending money, how you're spending the money. So we go to the bars, we buy bottled water, which, should be fairly tamper-proof, although neither one of us likes the idea of using plastic water bottles. Eli has that whole thing about microplastics. It's something he worries about constantly. But you buy the bottled water. That way you're spending money. And one of us can buy a drink, and if it seems like one of us is getting weirdly sleepy, we go home. Which seems like a lot of going out just to go home, but, again, we're ironing out all of those details. He is trying to figure out the best way to go in protected. I think he has holy water in a flask, a little cross, he wears a cross anyway, that kind of thing. And I have been preparing by going out into Storm Woods and just sort of talking out loud. I always play it off that I'm talking to the cat who has joined me because, anytime I go out, I allow the cat to come with. If the cat were the type who ran off into the woods to hide, um, we wouldn't be letting him outside with us. But, he sticks pretty close and we're able to both go out there. And, I'm not a big person on letting cats outside. It shortens their lifespan, but under supervision, which he has, we can do it. So, anyway, I play it off that I'm talking to the cats, but I'm actually talking to the woods itself. I'm talking to Hecate. It just makes me feel a little less insane to have the cat there, so it seems like I'm talking to him. And it also keeps the cat close, so, you know. But I've been asking, what's the best way to be protected? What is the best way to go into the woods? What is the best way for this, that, and the other? And a lot of times I'm getting answers in my dreams that evening. Hecate is very much liminal spaces, the in-between spaces. And I've always considered dreams to be a kind of in-between place. You're still in reality, like your body is in reality, but your brain, your consciousness, your soul, whatever you want to call it, is someplace else. And there are a lot of people who believe, like literally, like you astral travel when you dream, or you're visiting other iterations of your life. If you believe in a multiverse kind of thing, parallel lives kind of thing. Honestly, I always believed that it was just sort of your brain giving you a chemical bath to wash away all of the nonsense of the day. Like, I told you about this dream I had when I was working at both the bookstore and the bank, where I was putting books in, those tubes that you send your bank deposit in through at the drive-through of the bank. I was putting books in tubes and pushing them out. That's just my brain regurgitating my day back at me, in dreamland speak, which is why this bookstore bank was in my parents' basement. Like, a lot of times it's just your brain processing all of the information of the day in a surreal, bathed in weird brain chemical sort of way. So I kind of believe most often that's what's going on. But we are witches. And as witches, we know that a lot of times you get answers in the dream space. You get the metaphor of what you need to do next when you're dreaming. And so a lot of times my communications with Hecate are in that dream space. That is where the answers come from. I remember them a bit better when it's a meditation instead of a dream, but, I go walking at night before bed and come home and go to sleep. So, it all kind of happens at once. But anyway, I've had several dreams with Hecate. And do you remember the ritual we did? Oh, it's been 10 or 15 years ago when we had that women's retreat where it ended up getting rained out. And so we were at somebody's house instead of being at the park like we normally are. And the whole retreat was about seizing the night. We also called that weekend retreat Carpe Noctem, which is an interesting parallel in my mind. You know, it's serendipitous, and those serendipities always mean something, right? So I think I know what it means because the dream I had um, with that ritual, the whole ritual was about overcoming fears. And prior to that ritual, I had a fear of darkness, of nighttime, of a lack of light, right? And after that ritual, the darkness is my tool. The darkness is where I can exist. You know, through the process of that ritual, we went to 3 different faces of Hecate, and those 3 different faces, and we did it at night, we walked at night. I know, you were there, but I'm trying to talk all this out a bit, so go with me. We walked to each of those alone, but it was lit by torches, and each face of Hecate had a different message that she gave us, right? And the final face of Hecate was basically telling me that the darkness is something witches can wear like a cloak, like an armor. You are part of the darkness. You can pull the nighttime around you like a cloak or, like a bubble. And so one of the ways that I got that we can be protected is we can pull the darkness around us when we go into Carpe Noctem, and it will allow us to be more observers than noticed. It's not that we'll be invisible. It's not that we will be completely undetected. It's that we won't be noticed as much as if we just went in like we did last time. We will be part of the scenery as opposed to a person of note. So I have been practicing that, and I have been practicing wrapping myself in the darkness and wrapping my kitty cat in the darkness as we go walking. When Eli goes with me, I've practiced wrapping him in the darkness, um, which is a little bit trickier because, he has to participate. But he does. He knows what I'm doing, he's okay with it. He knows what the point is. We work a lot better when it's not he's in a darkness bubble, I'm in a darkness bubble, when we're in the same bubble, because we can communicate a little bit better. I have a hard time hearing him when he's wrapped up and I'm wrapped up. And so we're experimenting with that quite a bit. So again, not invisibility, not something that cannot be perceived, but more of a blending in. And that was one of the things the Seize the Night ritual really gave me, is witches are part of the nighttime. So instead of looking at the dark as full of scary things, full of things that can come and get you, know that you are part of the darkness. The things that belong in the darkness are part of you. So it's not that scary things can come get you, it's that you're one of the scary things, which I've never really thought of myself as a scary thing, but it does help for these purposes. It does help get me into the mindset and the groove of I am a witch and the woods are my home. Which is why walking at night at Stormwoods has not been a problem for me. I'm not even really taking a flashlight or anything. I have one on me just in case, because sometimes you do need to see things a little bit more clearly. But one of the things that ritual taught me is you can be part of the darkness, or you can be what stands out in the darkness, right? And if you have a flashlight or a lamp or a torch or whatever, a lot of times what you're doing is you are fighting the darkness. And by fighting the darkness, you're ruining your night vision, for one. You are actively not becoming part of the world, but you're becoming the thing in that world that stands out, like draw more attention to yourself. And one of the ways I've seen this play out is doing ritual at night when we have candles and everything, back when we had the coven. Um, all of the moths that just die in wax, we would be so much better served to not have the light attracting things to it, because then we become the enemy that's destroying things, right? At least in the ritual, we want to be part of nature, not against nature. And that's part of why, towards the end there, I switched to the electric candles because they didn't kill anything. You know, we weren't drowning bugs in wax. And, I very much don't want to cause harm to things that are just trying to live their life, right? Um, so anyway, when I do these walks, I try to pull the darkness around me, wear the darkness as a mantle instead of being separate from it. I try to integrate myself as part of the woods. I belong in the woods. Um, and, after that ritual, when you and I were walking around and we were talking and we felt like our voices were so loud that we were disrupting the night. We were the thing in the forest that everything else got quiet about. And, it was really, really nice that the people we were at had that little tiny little bit of woods because it did feel like we were in a forest at that point. It's not like being in the forest of storm woods, which feels endless when you're walking it. And when you're up on the tower watching, it looks endless, as far as you can see, it's woods. And, Jody and her family only had like a little tiny, tiny bit of woods in between two fields, but it felt endless when we were in it. And you said to me, okay, we are being external to the environment and loud. Stop and listen. And we listened to the sounds of the forest and the sounds of the wildlife. It's not like daytime where there are birds chirping all over the place, but there are still the sounds of the forest being alive. There's still the sounds of the animals. At that point, it was frogs mostly. Frogs, crickets, insect life, which is actually pretty loud a lot of the time. So anyway, all of that said, we had our voices become at the level of the forest. We had our voices talk at the same, just decibel, I guess. And once we did that, all of those sounds existed while we existed. All of the noises we made became part of the nature around us instead of fighting the nature around us. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to go into this adventure with is instead of going in as we are fighting an enemy, go in where we just blend in, where we are just part of what goes on. And I think we'll do a better job of that after we've gone a few times, because I don't know what blending in looks like in this scenario. I don't know what the majority of people who are always in Carpe Noctem, how they interact, how they behave towards each other. So we will be learning that kind of on the fly, and hopefully the little darkness bubble will help us figure that out. So I'm trying to get Eli and I both in the habit of blending in, which I think is a little bit more mindset than action exactly. And he's trying to figure out if he needs to bring wooden stakes or not. So he keeps trying to figure out how to make bullets out of teak. Because teak is apparently a very, very strong strong wood, according to him. Um, but I don't know that going in armed is going to be a good idea. So one of the things I've told you before about Eli is what I call Christian boy magic. Um, he's going to make a couple of talismans. He's talismanizing, as he says, his cross. And he asked me to pick some jewelry that I can make protective, or he can make protective, rather. And I was like, I can do that myself. He's like, yeah, but we're already doing your magic, so we're going to do some of mine. I'm like, all right, layers upon layers. And that's how our home is, too. We have layers of witch magic, layers of his Christian boy magic. As old as we are, I should probably call him Christian man now. It's just Christian boy sounds more fun to me, and he doesn't care, so doesn't matter. Anyway, um, So he thinks that we should basically do the same thing going into Carpe Noctem. And I said that I'm fine with that as long as he hurries the heck up. As long as he hurries up. I'm trying not to curse because, it's become way more of a bad habit than it should be. So I am going to be encouraging him to go quicker and quicker. One of the things Addison told me is that when they go and they're partying and having fun, they are seeing the same faces over and over again, the same people, and not the vampire LARPers, but like the same regulars at clubs. So us becoming regulars at certain places in Carpe Noctem may not be that difficult. I asked her if she had a chance to talk to any of the regulars, and apparently they've been mostly hitting bars where it's very, very loud, and that kind of thing. So, although there is one karaoke place that they haven't gone to yet that she's very excited about because she likes karaoke in general. So, she's going to be doing that, I think, this weekend. So, because, most of her coven, work Monday through Friday, so they can basically do this Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Um, and, Eli and I have enough breaks here and there that we can kind of go whenever. So, basically, at this point, we've been given the okay to set our own schedules as long as we are documenting what those schedules are. So, that gives us quite a bit of freedom. And, you know, they want us to be in the tower, and I still don't know who they are. It's still all via email. They want us to be in the tower for the majority of the hours that, we are home. But how we divide that up, they don't seem to care, you know? Sometimes we can overlap. Sometimes, I can do stuff. Eli can do stuff, as long as one of us is in there. So, but, you know, they 40 hours a week between the two of us in the tower. The rest of the time we can kind of do what we want, and I'm always a little bit weirded out by that. Like, okay, but what happens if there's a fire during like a day off? Because we have tried to coordinate it where we have, at least one day off or, you know, 4 hours here or there per day that we can spend together. But, most of the time we just spend that time together in the tower. If one of us is working, it's totally cool for the other one to go up there. So a lot of our planning has been during quote unquote work hours, but, we're watching woods, nobody cares if we have a conversation while we're doing it. But it does make me have a lot of questions. I kind of wish I could talk to the person who was the woods watcher before us, but I don't have any contact information, and I haven't done the social media stalking of the person yet to find out any information. So here we are. This is what we're doing. Um, and, you know, we haven't gotten any complaints about anything we're doing. But both of us kind of have a hope the forest doesn't burn down. And there are cameras that we have attached to our phones, so we can be checking in, you know. Um, and that gives us peace of mind a lot, especially when we're going someplace far. But, I even emailed, hey, when we go shopping or, if we take a day off and leave, do we need to let you know so somebody else can come in? And the reply I got back was basically, no, you don't need to do any of that. You don't need to let us know or anything. Just take the phones with you, as everybody does everywhere. That's goes without saying. They said it. But they said to make sure you're checking the cameras, once or twice an hour, and that should be good. Just enough time to where if any smoke is seen, we can get somebody there. I guess since there's a storm always raging, the ground is wet enough that 20 minutes here or there or 30 minutes here or there isn't going to mess up the forest too much because it would take a while for that forest to burn. When it is very, very lush, it is very, very temperate rainforest, heavy on the rain. So, that affords us a lot of freedom to go and do all these things. I just can't talk today. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to be leaving you a stuttering message, but apparently I'm going to. Apologies. But, sometimes when I'm tired, I just trip over my own words, and that's pretty much what's going on today. I am very tired. Because again, a lot of the sleep I've been doing has been dream work sleep. And sometimes that sleep is restful and sometimes it is not terribly restful. Sometimes it's, you wake up feeling like you've just run a marathon. So I am definitely operating on very little sleep. I'm hoping for several good nights of sleep before going to Carpe Noctem. I think once we have our plan ironed out and once we have the magic all done and everything like that, that it will be pretty smooth and go pretty easily. So that is what we're doing. But you know me, I hate this time period. For somebody who worships a liminal goddess, the in-between time is maddening in a lot of ways because I feel like I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting. And I don't like waiting. I would prefer to be doing. I would prefer to, let's drive to Carpe Noctem and scope it out once a day, But there's a certain amount of don't be suspicious, don't be suspicious, don't be suspicious, don't be suspicious that we got to do. Anyway. So we're trying to not be suspicious while we go and do suspicious things. Haha. So yeah, I'm not enjoying the hurry up and wait part of things because, I'm practicing the magic. I am doing all of the things, but I feel like I got a handle on that. I feel like I'm doing a good job with that. But, Eli basically said, well, you're doing a good job with that, with me and the cat in a magical woods in our home where things are pretty much advantageous to you. So he wants to make runs to a couple of the other towns at night to see how well we can do this stuff before we go to Carpe Noctem. And it just makes me want to pull my hair out. I get the caution. He's being smart about this. But why is being smart about this so blankety blink slow? It's just so slow. It's so slow, and I am impatient. Eli says it's kind of a primary personality trait that I am impatient, and I don't think he's wrong. And he's not wrong. I am impatient. But I wouldn't be as impatient if he weren't so slow. So that was a fun little back and forth. A lot of times when people hang out with us, they think that we're fighting and we're playing. Um, it's been you were the first person who said that it's like watching two scorpions sting each other and laugh. And we both have prominent Scorpio in our charts, so that is what we did. He called me impatient. I said I didn't have time for him, and we both laughed. So anyway. But I do need him to mentally plan, like, if we don't do this by next week, I'm probably going to go by myself. Which, anytime I say I'm going to do something on my own, it panics him. It's really, really weird. But, just me saying I'm going to go do it by myself puts him into a panic. So I haven't said that yet, but I know it's true. If we don't get this together to where we can go by either this weekend or next week, I mean, we don't really need to go on the weekend. Addison's kind of got the weekends covered. But, like, if we don't go within the next 7 days, I am going to be looking at going by myself. But I'll tell him that, Sunday or Monday, when we still have a few days left. But he knows me very well at this point. I think he knows that I'm getting impatienter, more impatient. And that I will end up doing all of this on my own if he doesn't get the plan together and gelled. One of the other things that I'm doing is I'm going through the list of epithets of Hecate I have. I don't know if I sent you that list, but I got it off of, I think, a blog post by Matt Oren. You know, the guy who wrote Psychic Witch? Great book. Have you read that yet? It's really it's excellent. But anyway, he had a list that's like, I don't know, it's like 4 or 5 pages front and back. And so I'm looking at various epithets of Hecate to call in various aspects if I need her. And the one that I am probably going to use, and her epithets are in Greek, so I probably am butchering this, but it's Hecate Sotera. Um, so that is Savior Protector, is what the translation kind of said. So that is what I am looking at. And my phone keeps going off. It is very, very annoying, and I apologize. And Eli keeps messaging me. I told him I was leaving you a message and that I would probably be about 45 minutes, so I'm trying to ignore whatever texts he's sending. But if he sends another one, I may have to pause this and read them. Anyway, I apologize for the background pings and toot-toots and things like that. If he can't get me on one form of messaging, he often sends the other, because sometimes I'm only paying attention to one or the other. Anyway, that is neither here nor there. I will say that I feel like this is upping my witchy game a little bit, at least the practicing the darkness stuff. You know, I feel like there's a lot of things that I have not been practicing regularly, witchcraft-wise, which I am again. You know, anytime you move into a new place, you cleanse it, you put up your wards, you put up your protections and things like that. And I've kind of gone overboard on that with not only this house, but our car. I've done a lot with our clothing, done a lot with our shoes. You know, a lot of malicious witchcraft can be done to shoes, so I've put extra protections on all of our footwear. I have also placed protections all over the cat, and the cat might be getting annoyed with me on that one because I do that every time we go out, and then I've done it several other times just inside. So that may be one where the cat's getting pretty frustrated with me and no longer wants to deal with me putting protections on him. But, you know, I'm going to keep doing it because that's who I am as a person. But anyway, so I feel like my protection game, which was always on point, not to brag, but, you know, first and foremost, I'm a protection witch. But I feel like it's gotten so much better. You know, I feel like my protection game is definitely upped itself a level, which I didn't know it could, you know. Every time I think that I've done as much as I can do in a certain area of witchcraft, I find out there's more to learn. So I have found out there's more to learn here, which is pretty cool. All right, I'm going to have to cut this short because clearly Eli is not going to stop bothering me until I give him my full attention. But I will keep you posted on how all of this goes. I know that you have a lot of questions that I didn't answer from last time, but hopefully I will be able to answer all of the questions in your last message next time. And yeah, I will talk to you later.